Good stewards travel the highway to heaven. In our gospel passage today, Jesus is once again telling us the Ten Commandments are still in effect. Yes, he came to fulfill the old law, but that doesn't mean do away with them. The Ten Commandments are still there. Don't kill, don't murder, don't steal. He fulfills the old covenant with a new covenant, and in the new covenant, he says, as Deacon Jim read, up the ante quite a bit. Not only don't do really bad things like murdering someone, don't even do little bad things like getting angry with others. Now, if Jesus isn't saying don't experience the feeling of anger, that's normal, that's natural, it happens to everyone, it happened to Jesus. We all have the feelings of anger, but as I have said many times, feelings are all morally neutral. They're not good or bad, they're not sinful, they're not sinful, they're just feelings. It's what we do as a result of the feelings that may or may not be sinful. So the ante has been upped quite a bit. And as I was preparing this homily, I began thinking of the road to heaven. What do we need to do on that road to heaven to get to heaven? And then I began thinking about an old television program. Michael Landon was Little Joe in Bonanza. You can watch it on MeTV. Michael Landon was Charles Ingalls in Little House on the Prairie. Michael Landon was a probationary angel in Highway to Heaven. Here's how Highway to Heaven began. Michael Landon was in a traffic jam in Los Angeles. He was in his car. Everybody was as angry as they could possibly be, yelling and screaming at each other, doing the finger gesture to each other. And Michael Landon was thinking, you know, if we just used, we humans, the energy that we use to be angry, if we use that same energy on being kind to others, what a gorgeous place the world would be. And as he was in his car, thinking that thought, he thought back to his first paycheck as an actor. It was in the early 50s. He got $260, and trust me, $260 in the early 50s was a lot of money. And he was walking along the highway in downtown Beverly Hills, having an enormous amount of pleasure because he felt he was rich. He had $260 in his pocket. But then he walked by a toy store, and he saw two little boys with their noses up on the window of the toy store. So he stopped, and out of curiosity said, you know, if you could buy what you want, what would you buy? One little boy pointed to a wagon, and he said, I'd buy that wagon. The other little boy pointed to a model airplane. He said, I'd buy that plane. Well, you know what happened next. You can figure it out. Michael Landon took the boys inside the store and bought them, each of them, the toy he wanted. And he remembered as he sat there in that traffic jam how much enormous pleasure, no happiness. It was pleasurable having that $260 in his pocket, but he knew that pleasure was going to go away. And sure enough, in a couple of days, it did. He wasn't thinking any longer about the $260. But doing that act of kindness gave him happiness. Serving others always makes us happiness, and happiness trumps pleasure every time. And he said, you know how happy that made me? All these years later, as I'm sitting in this traffic jam, I remember thinking what I thought. Well, that led to thinking about a television program in which if people did little acts of kindness, they would get to heaven. And Michael Landon called it Highway to Heaven. All based upon what Jesus tells us in the gospel. Don't do big bad things, that's the Ten Commandments. Don't do little bad things. And elsewhere in the Scriptures, Jesus tells us, more than that, use the energy that you would have used to be angry to do little acts of kindness. That will change the world. So in one of the episodes of Highway to Heaven, the script called for there to be a little boy who had cancer. And Michael Landon thought, I'm going to go out and actually get a little boy who has cancer. That'll make this program really real. And he did. A little boy by the name of Josh Woods. Josh had cancer, in fact, had lost a leg to cancer. But what Michael Landon didn't know about Josh was Josh stammered terribly when he got nervous. So when he got on the set, he started stammering. And the more he stammered, the more the director yelled at him. And the more the director yelled at him, the more he stammered. Michael Landon walked over to the director and said, "Let me handle this. Let's live what we're preaching in this television program." And he leaned over to little Josh and said, "Josh, we're going to change your role. You're still going to be a little boy with cancer. You're still going to be a little boy with cancer who lost his leg. But now you're also going to be a little boy with cancer who lost his leg who stammers." Josh Woods never stammered again in his entire life. That little act of kindness cured him. That's what Jesus teaches us. Big bad wrongs, they kill our soul. Little wrongs, like anger, badly bruise and damage our souls. But little acts of love cure. They cure our souls. So in a practical way, what does this mean to us? Well, you figure it out. But the next time you're arguing with your spouse, with anyone, you're arguing about politics. He's a Democrat, you're a Republican, and you're arguing. Stop and do a little act of kindness. You're not going to change that person by yelling and screaming and arguing with that person. That person's got to change himself or herself. You're responsible for your own self. Change yourself. Do a little act of kindness. It will be miraculous. Now, you might say, "Oh, no, Father, look, I've been down this road before. He's still going to be yelling at me." So what? He's got a problem. You don't have to let his problem be your problem. He can yell, he can be angry. That's his right. You choose to do a little act of kindness. Why? Because it's what the Son of God, it's what Jesus Christ teaches us. It's what the Son of God tells us we need to do to get on that road to heaven, that highway to heaven. My sisters and brothers, we are all called to be good stewards. And good stewards travel the highway to heaven.